Welcome back, wordsmiths and story seekers. I am your host, Daniel Wilcox, broadcasting from the shadowy halls of Devil's Rock HQ. And tonight I am thrilled to share the writer's chair with the legendary harbinger from the southern British valleys that is Tim Lebbon. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Dan. Great to see you again.
Great to see you again. So Tim Lebbon is an award-winning New York Times best-selling horror, thriller and fantasy writer from a little village in South Wales. He's written over 45 novels, dozens of novellas, hundreds of short stories, as well as tie-in novels in the Alien, Predator, Hellboy, Star Wars, Firefly, and now the Halo universes. And his novel The Silence was made into a Netflix movie starring Kiernan Shipka and Stanley Tucci. When not writing, Tim could be found swimming, biking, and running in triathlons, activities which found their way into his non-fiction book, Run, Walk, Crawl, Getting Fit in My 40s. And if that intro sounds familiar to you, Tim, that's because I used the exact same intro, bar the Halo bit, when we last spoke in 2022,
right, okay.
And you said you loved it, so I thought I'd bring it back for this one.
It was great. The only is over 50 novels now.
Well, I'll have to update that for the next one. The next time will be like 55, I'm sure.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, cool. Great intro. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to you. As I say, like it's been, I didn't like that it's been 3.5 years since we've last sat down and interviewed. And that was on my former podcast, Activated Authors, which I'll link to for people in the show notes if they want to find out what we chatted about here. We spoke about tie-ins in novellas. We talked about what it's like being a working writer, all that kind of stuff. But we were going to talk today about Secret Lives of the Dead, your new book.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I have a very, very important question. Do you have any new mugs?
Oh, yes. So I've got, my mug radiator. This is, so I've also got to ask, can you hear a squeaking noise? Because I
can hear the squeaking, but I mean, feel free to introduce the little puppers.
Yeah. Right. I'll show you my mug first. This is the Titans of Terror tour mug. So Chris Golden and I went on tour in the UK this year. We had a load of merch done and nobody bought it. But so I got some. Well, people bought a few t-shirts, actually. We had some t-shirts in the crowd, which is quite cool. Squeaking has stopped. The dog's got tired of his toy. That's good. You may wander in.
That's fine. We can, for people watching YouTube, you might see a little brand new pupper walking in and out.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't look like he's 10 months now. He's a lab.
Yeah.
And he's like 30 kilos. He's a big lad. He's almost fully grown. So he's still not even one. So I don't think he's got a little bit of growing left to do. So you won't see a cute little pup run in, but you may see a big dog.
Just an absolute teenager.
Yeah.
Why did you go for a lab, if you don't mind me asking?
So we lost our previous dog almost 4 years ago now. And my wife and I have been toying with the idea of getting another dog. And then my wife, I was away. I occasionally pop down to West Wales to a friend's house. She lets us use a house down there on the coast, and it's fucking fantastic. It's just a beautiful, like, utopian writer's retreat. And I sit there and write for a week, and it's brilliant. So I was on the way down, and my wife phoned and said, "There's a litter of labs in the village from a friend of ours." So I spent the whole week down there, in an hour, and we were going to get a new dog. So that's it, really. It was just happenstance. A friend happened to have a litter of pups, and so his dad is a fox red lab.
Nice.
We were talking about a fox red lab. We'd researched it a bit, and they're like a bit easier than our previous dog. Was a cross between a Weimaraner and a Vizsla, and he was gorgeous, but he was hard work. He was just feisty and full of energy. And we'd sort of, we're not as young as we were then. We're fit enough to walk dogs miles every day and strong enough to hold them back, but we figured a lab would be a bit easier. I'm not sure he is yet.
No, from my understanding, it takes sort of a couple of years, a year or two to kind of calm them down there a bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's great. He's great off lead. This is nothing to do with writing, is it? But he's fantastic off lead. I walk him every morning before I start work, which is just lovely. Rain or shine, but yeah, every time we bump into people, he sort of jumps at people occasionally, or beats their, not fights, but plays with their dog. They say, "Oh, you got another year yet," and we're like, "Oh, thanks."
Always fun to hear. But peeling that back, then getting into the writing, you mentioned obviously the mug that you had with the Titans of Terror. I loved that artwork, by the way. But I saw the tour dates, and I was really trying to get to you somewhere on the tour, and I didn't get a chance to. But how was it? What was the tour, and how was that for you?
It was great. So basically, Chris and his wife Connie were over on vacation for 4 weeks, tour in the UK. They did England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And he said to me, we're coming over. Let's do a tour." So, because I Secret Lives of the Dead was out for me, and Chris's new book, The Nightbirds, was out from Titan for him, and and 50 something novels into my career, I've never been on a book tour, and a publisher's never sent me on tour, and I've never done it myself. Titan were actually going to send me on tour for Eden, which came out June 2020. Uh, and
No more
obviously,
needs to be said.
yeah, reasons why that didn't happen. So I said to Chris, yeah. So we sort of arranged it ourselves. Titan did, contribute, to the finance for the tour, but also they set up all the signings for us. So we signed in Edinburgh, York, Oxford. Should have signed in Oxford, didn't. London, Bristol, and Abergavenny, my local bookstore. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was just great spending 2 weeks on the road with Chris and Connie. Um, and as usual with these things, some events were better attended than others, but we just had a blast. We met loads of friends and made new friends, sold a load of books. It was great. It was really good fun. And we timed the first signing we wanted it to be in Edinburgh because looking at your sweatshirt, Frank Turner's Lost Evenings was in Edinburgh. So
Yes.
we tapped up Frank, sent a cheeky emails and, hey, we're on tour in Edinburgh. He said, oh, here's some tickets to my show. So we went to the last night of Lost Evenings and had a blast and caught up with Frank really briefly afterwards. Bless him, he was, exhausted. He'd been rocking for 4 days. So he still carved out 10 minutes after the last gig to say hello, which was really nice.
He's got so much to give, that guy.
He's a really good dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw him last time, probably when you did 2024, you said, before we started recording. I think I saw him then. And he said, oh, next time hit me up for tickets. So I wasn't going to say no to that. So I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I mean, I'm yet to go on book tour. I'm very much looking forward to the time that happens. I know that you mentioned there Christopher Golden, and one thing that I've observed as a fan of your works and as just kind of being a bit of a spy in your orbit, is obviously you have a very, very strong relationship with Chris Golden. You blurb each other's books. You seem to kind of you do projects together and be in each other's orbit. And it kind of got me thinking, because I'm very much in a position at the minute, or in my own personal writing journey, I'm very much looking at getting more into the community, networking, just meeting more people, just being more part of the in-person community. Because obviously you kind of touched on COVID there, which turned us all digital. My life has been very digital the last 4 years. You seem to be at a lot of events that I have attended, of the few that I have attended. You go to these fairs and these cons, and you've been touring and things. How important to you is it to be out there with people in the community, speaking books, speaking horror?
I'd love to do it more than I do, to be honest, and I've been in, so 30 years next year is the anniversary of my first novel publication, which is
Wow.
fucking terrifying, but it's also something I'm quite proud of. And 20 years this year, I've been making a living from writing. So, and that's another thing to sort of celebrate. So for me, I've made so many friends. I've made my best friends in my life through writing. Chris is, one of my best, dearest friends. I get to see him once every 3 or 4 years, which is sad. And with the state of the world now, probably may not see him for a while yet,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's really important to me. And British Fantasy Convention, where I've seen you 2 or 3 times, is usually my go-to. Did I go last year? I can't even remember. I think it coincided with something else last year.
I think it was WorldCon last year, because British Fantasy piggybacked on that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I didn't do that because we were on tour for 2 weeks before, and then I did Comic-Con in London. The Titan wanted me to go to, or Comic-Con and invited me to, and then I didn't have it in me to go to Brighton the next weekend for another hot, heavy weekend of it. And I had major FOMO. Gemma Ramore was there, and she was posting all these great photos, and there were American friends I hadn't seen for ages. So I do wish I'd gone, but also I was quite comfortable with the decision not to go. I love writing events. Edgelit is one of my favorites. I was a guest at Edgelit last year, and that's always a fantastic weekend. So I go to as many as I can feasibly get to. The trade fairs aren't cheap, and You know, sometimes you get your way paid, other times you don't. Yeah, I wish there was a more of a. I know there's a bit of a community in Bristol, but also it's like a, you know, there's a bunch of people meet up there every month or two, and it's either Bristol or Bath, and it always ends up being inconvenient for me time wise because it's Bristol's an hour, Bath's an hour and a half journey, and it's so I wish there was more community around where I am.
Mhm.
There's not so much, to be honest. Uh, but yeah, I just love catching up with writing friends, and it's, I find, you know, I've got a load of American friends. So I used to go to um, World Horror, World Fantasy, Horror Find, all these conventions in the States back 20 years ago now. And I used to go to 2 or 3 a year. And I've no idea how I could afford it back then, you know, but I managed it. And I wouldn't be writing now if I hadn't gone to these conventions, absolutely without a doubt. My first American deal was made at 3 in the morning in a room party. I think this might have been an absinthe party. These room parties in American conventions were legendary. You go into this suite and there'd be a bath full of beer and ice and dozens of people. Um, there was one particular convention. It was a 6th floor hotel, and the suites were all at the end of the wing.
Mhm.
So on each floor, there were 2 parties going on. So you'd start at the top and fall down the stairs through the space of 8 hours and go to 7 or 8 parties. It was just amazing. And these, you know, I made loads of friends there, and I see them infrequently now. But when I do see them, it's like I saw them yesterday. Like Brian Keane, he's a good mate of mine. But I see Brian every 5 years now. You know, I used to
Yeah.
see him twice, 2, 3 times a year. That was a really long-winded way of saying I really love going to writing events.
No, it's perfect. I mean, it kind of, champions the idea of going to these, even if you're nervous, even if you're shy. Like I went to
Yeah.
StokerCon in 2023 with Gemma and Neil McRobert and Ali Wilkes and a few others. And
I
there was a
remember
small.
a tap on the shoulder from you. You saying, "Hey, you got a Frank t-shirt, Frank Turner
Yes.
t-shirt on."
No,
Yeah.
that was ChillerCon. That
Oh,
was
Silicon that was. Sorry. Yeah.
that
Right.
was 2021 maybe?
21 or 22.
Over
Sorry.
in Scarborough, yeah.
That's
But
it.
yeah, no, that was how, because we'd spoken like intermittently online through things. Like I think I gave you a discount code for Vellum at one point.
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, we bonded over Frank, which is
That's it.
again.
Right. Yeah.
I said for listeners before we jumped on, I said that was the reason I was wearing this hoodie, but I wear this hoodie most days. So,
Yeah.
but no, we went to StokerCon. That was the one in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a small group of us from the UK went over, and I
Yeah.
didn't expect on the final night to have Brian Keane usher a lot of people up into a hotel room filled with booze and
Whiskey.
just to have fun. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah. I heard a lot about that con from Gemma and wish I'd gone. Isn't that the one where the flight was cancelled on the way home and you had to stay another night?
Yeah, it kind of weirdly worked out in a nice way because Katrina Ward ended up hosting us the next day for like a meal on the waterfront of Pittsburgh, and it was
Cool.
gorgeous. So it was really like, I'd not met her before, I had like a proper conversation. She's lovely.
Yeah. That's
So
great.
yeah. Then this is it. Like it's those opportunities to have kind of spontaneous moments. Like I've never gone to a convention or an event thinking this is what I must achieve. I've just kind of
Right.
gone, chatted to people, seen what's going on, and from that come stories and new friendships.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's okay going to these cons with sort of, you know, I want to meet this editor and have a chat with him or her over a beer, you know. But if you go with a schedule of people you want to meet and you're looking over people's shoulders to see if there's anyone else more important in the room, shit like that doesn't work. You know, like you say, you go and you just have a great time. And like I said, some of the best deals, you know, the most exciting sort of publishing deals I've done have been in a room party at a convention. You know.
Well, I think just being a nice person in those moments. But you
Yeah.
mentioned obviously about you said that you probably wouldn't be writing if it hadn't been for these events, these friendships.
Yeah.
For new writers that are kind of getting into the space that, are a bit intimidated about declaring themselves horror writers or meeting other horror authors, the kind of like imposter syndrome that comes with being a new writer. What
Mm.
advice would you give to them in sort of 2026 to help them integrate with the horror community?
Well, it's first of all, I'd say imposter syndrome doesn't just hit new writers. I get it all the time. Still, I'm halfway through a novel at the moment, thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Thinking I can write a novel. I mean, it's changed a lot since I don't want to sound old all the time. I really don't feel old, but I'm very aware of how long I've been in the industry, you know. So 30 years since my first novel was published next year, which is scary, yeah. But it's changed a lot since then. But even back then, there were message boards and stuff online. Now you've got social media, which is rapidly becoming anti-social media. But
Yeah.
you can still, you can be on there and be part of a community and, you know, be careful about how you interact and try and be positive and kind and, not get drawn into all the bullshit. Um, but definitely meeting people face to face is still the the way. It's almost the analog way. I'm going back to listening to vinyl, and I never really got on with. I've got Kindle, and I use it for stuff like blurbing and stuff like that. But my life, probably partly because of my age and partly because of the way I feel about things, is gone back to analog. And I suppose analog v digital about being part of a community. You can be a part of a digital community. Book groups on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, which I've not touched. Um, uh, but there's nothing like sitting down having a drink with somebody, you know. And it goes both ways. Like I see a lot of arguing and pissing and moaning online with people arguing about various things, and I always think it blows up really quick and often for no reason. And if you were having that discussion with somebody at a table with a bunch of other people at a convention having a beer, it would be a disagreement that you'd laugh about and agree to disagree. But it's easier communicating with people face to face, and it always will be. So young writers, I'd say, get to British Fantasy Convention, get to Old Fiction. In the States, get to StokerCon, and there's loads of other genre conventions around. And and being shy at these conventions shouldn't hold you back. Most conventions nowadays have a very good sort of welcoming track for people who've never been before. They sometimes team you up with somebody who'd been there, who's been loads of times, and get to show you around and just go up and say hello to people. I don't think over many years I've hardly ever regretted sort of going up to somebody at the bar and saying, "Hey, I love that book I read of yours. My name's Tim. Fancy a drink?" And you end up making friendships like that. It's not often that you do that and you regret doing it. I can't. If I really put my mind to it, I could probably think of a few instances, but nothing really sticks out.
Yeah. I will say as well, just for people who are maybe new in this space, like horror writers are lovely people. I don't
Yeah,
know what it is, but you hear about sort of the cattiness in other genres and things going on.
yeah,
It just seems to be like as weird and dark as the stuff is that we write. I'm yet to meet a horror author I haven't really gotten on with.
yeah. I agree, and I part of it's finding your tribe. I think
Mm.
we all grew up sort of liking different stuff, watching different stuff, different from other people largely. Even in sort of high school, I was guys I was friendly with, all horror fans and heavy metal fans. It's the same with music. If you go to a heavy metal gig, I don't think I've been to hundreds of rock gigs. I don't think I've ever seen any trouble. Everyone's so welcoming. The more violent the mosh pit, the nicer people are. I went to an Idols gig last summer with my family. Big Idols fan. My wife, my son and daughter also fans, and my daughter's boyfriend. And song two, he and I were in the mosh pit. You're never too old to mosh.
Yeah.
I sort of take my glasses off, give them to my wife, hold my pint, let's go in 10 minutes. So we went in, and it was rough, and I came back covered in sweat and dust and blood. So I've been hit in the head with a plastic glass. But it's the best
Jeez.
time. You fall down and people pick you up. And it's the same. It's the same in writing. The writing community, horror writing community. You fall down. You have a downtime, and people pick you up. And it's. I find it now. Even me and Chris now. We've been friends for a long time. We both have periods of our career where it's like, oh shit, what am I going to do next? That deals fall apart. You ghosted, pitch stuff, and you ghosted, and it still happens all the time now. So we're there for each other privately, but also, horror writers are there for each other in public as well. Absolutely, without a doubt, best people I've met are horror writers.
For sure.
I don't know
And
what it is. Is because we
no,
get it all out on the page? Don't know.
I think that's it. Like I feel like the page is the therapist for horror writers.
Yeah,
And yeah, you get all that stuff out of your head and all it leaves is niceness. There we go. That's a
yeah,
cute little quote, isn't
yeah.
it?
That's good. No, it's true. I think it's true a lot of time. I don't consciously find. I mean, occasionally I've written stuff that I think this is cathartic. I've written about stuff that's happened to me and think, yeah, this works. You know, early on in my career, I bumped off loads of school bullies. I bet they've all been killed many times now, so I can't do that anymore. But other stuff you write about. But most of the time, it's not consciously cathartic, but it almost certainly is all the time. In the same way that I think I don't consciously write autobiographically, but I go back and read stuff I've written and think, oh wow, yeah, that's me in that period of my life, or that's me and my wife, stuff like that. It's a bit scary sometimes.
It sneaks in there, which kind
Yeah.
of is a nice little segue into your new book, Secret Lives of the Dead. And that came out at the end of last year.
Hmm.
And for setting the context for this part of the interview, would you be happy to kind of give the elevator pitch, a bit of an overview of what this book is about and kind of where it came from?
Right. Where it came from first. So I decided I fancied to go at a crime novel. And I wrote the first few chapters and sent it to my agent. He said, Tim, it's terrific, but it's a horror novel. I said, no, Howard, it's crime. He said, no, it's a horror novel. Howard's very wise. He's one of the main reasons I'm still writing. He's I've been together now for 20 odd years, maybe more. And he's become a really dear friend, So partly him saying that made me rethink what I was writing, and it did become a horror novel. So elevator pitch. I'd rather read the whole novel to you than try and do a back cover blurb.
That's fair.
So the background is a group of three friends decide to burgle a local mansion, local sort of country house that's abandoned. One of the friends has ulterior motives for doing this, which becomes clear fairly early on in the novel. And while they're burgling this house, another person turns up who is a bit of a mean bastard, Lem, and he's potentially responsible for the deaths of one of this group's fathers. Um, and it's all wound up in like an ancient witch's curse, which isn't like forefront in the novel, but it's pretty much the spine that the novel hangs on. And it becomes a bit of a chase story, really. Bit of a revenge story, bit of a chase story, nastiness in there. So it did start off as a crime novel, but the sort of supernatural element of it came more to the fore as I was writing it, even though there's a bit of ambiguity about the supernatural side of it. Yeah, I hate elevator pitches.
Yeah.
I really think it's a folk horror family love story revenge thriller. There you go.
Yeah. And it's very different to the other books you've written. As you say, like it started off as a crime, well, the idea of a crime book, which I can definitely see how that would have been, the origins of this story. But the books of yours I've gone through so far, The Silence, Eden, The Last Storm, Among the Living,
Yeah,
Among the Living, yeah.
on the living.
And
Yeah,
I think last time we spoke, there was threads of climate in all of your other books, which seems to be totally absent in this. It feels like a very, very different direction, but it's still a very, very you book. How conscious were you of trying to write something different versus some of the other stuff when you kind of got into this book?
So the last three I'd written before that were the three mentioned: Eden, Last Storm, and Among the Living, which they're a very loose, sort of unconnected trilogy, just with climate change horror thriller as background. So I did want to try something different, not because I'm bored of the whole climate thing as a basis for a story, and I will write more stuff. I'm hoping to pitch an anthology at some point in the near future about something similar. But I did want to try something a little different. Part of that was, I mean, the talk about the balance between art and commerce. Part of it was because I wanted to write something different, and the other part of it was because I thought it might help help the next sales figures and things like that. Which when you're making a living from writing, you have to think about, much as I just like to write what I want to write all the time. So it was a conscious decision just to try something a little different, really. Very, very different, as it turned out.
Yeah. And what I liked about it from a reader's perspective is, as you say, you've got these kind of in the background elements of the supernatural, of this witch's curse. You've got a lot of family legacy stuff hovering there.
Yeah,
But at the forefront, and very much at the forefront, is this relationship between the main three that are
yeah,
in the manor. You got Jodie, you got BB, you got Matt, who are all friends with different relationships and things. And I liked, again, as a reader, I really felt the humanity of that book and the kind of
mm,
the pulls and pushes of the different dynamics of their friendship, contrasted in the cat and mouse against Lem, who is terrifying, to be honest, is this
yeah,
absolute brute of a person. And I won't obviously say too much to spoil
yeah.
anything for anyone that wants to read the book, but there's a real kind of invincibility is too strong a word, but he's a tank of a person.
I
So
was
I
really
like,
pleased with Lem. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, there was a lot in there. And I think there's just the journeys of those characters and how they tie together. Because that the end for me and the way that it all tied up was kind of in the ballpark of what I was expecting, but not fully what I was expecting. And the journey to get there, and again, I'm not trying not to say too much for like
yeah.
spoilers. People
Please.
read the book. It's good. It's fast paced. It's not too long either, which is fantastic. Um, but no, the sort of cat and mouse, and what I like particularly in the book, and what I've seen a lot at the minute, I've just read Keith Rosson's Fever House, is I
He's such a fucking great writer.
dynamite,
Have you
absolutely
read
loved it.
Coffin Moon?
I haven't. No, I'm working my
Oh
way
my
through
god,
the
it's.
catalog at the minute.
I mean, Fever House. I've read. I haven't read um, Devil by Name.
Devil, yeah,
Devil by Name, but I went on to Coffin Moon, and it's just sublime. It's
okay.
yeah.
That
Anyway,
might
yeah,
bump up my TBR.
yeah,
But I'm a personal fan of all this POV switching. Like I know there's a lot of like advice in the writing community about stick with one POV and this, but like I
yeah.
personally really like the head swapping and seeing, because I think it creates more of an emotional connection between the reader and the characters. You understand those characters more, which means things matter, like when you fall through the floor of a manor and things
Mm,
happen.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, you have to do. uh, I'm not sure I've ever written one novel from just one point of view, and that always um, the story tells you how to write it. I find with stuff like that, and I've written some novels with first and third person points of view, which I think can work really well. Sometimes it doesn't work great. I think the writer that sort of introduced me to that was Mike Marshall Smith. I can't remember which book, but one of his books, I thought, wow, this is first person and third person for different characters, obviously. Um, or present tense and past tense, whatever, which I use in Secret Lives of the Dead. But yeah, you have to not so much in a filmic way. It still has to be. You can't. I try not to be omnipotent because that just doesn't work. But but writing from different characters' points of view, you just have to, especially in a type of relationship like the three characters in Secret Lives of the Dead. It's important to see, especially with Jodie and what's going on with her. It's important to see her from the inside and from without as well, I think.
Yeah. And you don't give too much away too quickly, which is like there's a nice sort of
Mm,
slow reveal as to the elements that are going on and what happens. When
yeah,
you're, because you described yourself last time we spoke as more of a plotter than more of a pantser than a kind of plotter.
yeah,
How does that unfold in your head? Is it a case of you try to deliberately start with yourself blank-ish with these characters
mm.
and then see what happens, or are there kind of dots that you connect along the way?
Um, it's different for every book, actually. For this one, that was
You sound
quite
like
different.
such a writer.
Well, yeah, but it is. So for Secret Lives, that was quite hard because there's lots of elements, present stuff and past stuff happening that being described at the same time as different characters' points of view. So that worked out quite hard. So it took a lot of work. The initial draft came out fairly quickly, as it usually does, and then there was a lot of work to weave the narratives in through each other like tree roots.
Yeah.
It's almost like the first draft of that book was the trunk, and then I had to go back and build the branches and make it all work together and make it tie together. Um, and I like what you said about the ending. I didn't know what was going to happen at the end of that book, and that's even as I was getting close towards the end, and even after I'd finished it, I wasn't quite sure. And I did go back and tweak the ending several times to reflect what I wanted the outcome of the book to be without any spoilers. So that was really interesting. Because usually when I'm writing a book, um, so the one I'm working on now, I've half written and I left it last year to go on to some other work. And I'm back to it now. And I spent spending some time reading through and sort of thinking about what happens. And I am planning it more than I usually do. And that's because it's sort of, there's various things still floating around. I still basically haven't got the core of the book in my head. And I think today I just sort of found it. I think I just realized what's going to happen in it. Um, this is something Keith Rosson mentioned yesterday or the day before on social media somewhere. He said 40,000 words and months into this book, I finally found a plot point that makes it clear, something like that.
Yeah.
And that often happens. And sometimes it doesn't happen until almost the end of the book. Then you go back and rewrite with that in mind. So I'm still a pantser, really. But I'm learning more and more the sort of value of knowing roughly where you're going, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I still argue, because I used to coach authors a few years ago, and we had this constant debate about plotters versus pantsers and what a first draft was. And I found a few writers who found success in the technique of, rather than writing a first draft, they would write a 0.5 draft. And it's just psychology. It was a first draft, but they basically stripped away all of the pressure of making it a good enough quality to be a first draft, if that makes sense. But it was still a first draft. So I feel like with pantsers, like, myself included in this, I'm more on the pantser scale than the plotter. That first draft is my outline, is my plan. And then the rest comes in the edits.
Yeah, I sort of, hearing you say that, then there's a blurring line between a plan and a first draft, I guess. I was William Hussey, friend, writer Bill Hussey. He posted something online today about planning of one of his books. No, it was about how to get from a plan to a finished novel, and he was posting pictures about these are some of the pages of notes from my plan for my book. And there was like 40 pages of notes on the floor, and he'd taken a picture. And I think, holy shit, that's like almost the first draft for me. And it just shows how people work differently, This current book I'm working on, it's called The Skin of His Teeth. Don't want to say too much about it because I still don't understand it yet. But I'm making notes on that today. I'm at to about 8 or 9 pages of single spaced, working through characters and the plot and the mythology and stuff like that. But it just goes to show, Bill's got 40 or 50 pages of notes for a novel. I'll have 8 or 9, and then I dive in. And that probably makes it harder for me in rewrites and edits. But that's always where the work is, really. You finish the first draft, and then the real work begins. So for whatever you call the first draft, 0.5 draft or long plan or first draft, it's getting the story down beginning to end.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the work begins then, I find. Yeah.
How many sort of main layers of edits would you say that you put on a work before you're ready to sort of hand it over and say, like, it's near finished?
It's really so.
Depends on the book.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
But also, fewer drafts than I used to do, I think. But then I don't know what. I also think different writers define drafts as different things.
Yeah.
My good mate Adam Neville, he'll do 19 drafts of a novel, for instance. But one of those drafts might just be, right, I'm doing a character pass on this particular character. I'm not speaking for Adam, I don't know. But I suppose if I can stuff like that, I'm probably doing a dozen drafts of a novel. But it's not big. It's not rewrite A to Z every time. Even the second draft is just going through, and because I leave notes to myself when I'm writing a novel. Research this or revise this, notes in red, and then I go back and I'll do a search for a revision, and I rewrite when I get to that one and think about that. So sometimes I don't like being held up.
Yeah.
If I'm stuck on halfway through a chapter, I know I need to research, knee surgery in the 18th century. I don't want to spend fucking days going off reading books about that. So I'll just say research this to get it right. But I think different writers call drafts have, some writers might say, oh, draft 3 or draft 5 is making sure each end of chapter feeds into the next one. It's not necessarily massive surgery each time. It becomes less and less. It should become less and less as you go through. So I'll do God knows how many reads of a novel before I send it off,
Until you're sick of it and your eyes hurt.
Oh
That's the
yeah,
rule. Yeah.
absolutely. So the Halo novel, for instance, I don't know how many times I've read through that because there's lots of law that have to follow for that, Um, but yeah, again, I do find it's different with different projects. Novels tend to take more attention. I'll write a novella, read through it, tweak it, and send it off quite often. Short stories, fairly similar. Novels, they're a different beast. Certainly a short story, and sometimes novellas, it's a one stream thing. Novels tend to be, by definition, usually need to be more complex and deeper in places, I guess.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of on that note, allow me to pick your brain as someone who's got quite a variety of novellas, novels, short stories, the
Yeah.
whole sort of spectrum. Was asked in the Devil's Rock community the other day by Brennan whether they're a new writer, they haven't written their first novel yet,
Right.
and they're kind of wondering if they start with the novella and then work to novel, and
Mm.
kind of really if there's too much of a difference in the sense of what the market might take versus what a reader would like. Have you got kind of any strong opinions on sort of novella versus novel when it comes to working on that first book?
So I cut my teeth on short stories and then went short stories and novellas and then went on to novels. I still write all three now. I've got several short stories due to come out soon, and
I might have the cat jumping on
you
me
got
in a
the cat
second.
coming
Like I
out.
said, pre-recorded. Yeah. Hi. Go on.
Um, I've no real strong opinion. The only thing is, if you write a novella, the markets. If you write a novella, you're looking at indie press markets. If you write a novel, you could potentially look at the big 4 or 5 publishers. That's the only thing. It's difficult to sell a novel into the mainstream unless there's anthologies or collections happening. Or sometimes you can sell a novel to novella to an anthology if it's really fucking good and the editors and they're willing to take it. But even then, if an anthology is looking for 6,000 word stories and you sell them a 12,000 word story, you're knocking somebody else out of the place.
Yeah.
Potentially. Novellas for
There
me.
it is.
Yeah, there he is.
Hi.
Want my pup to come in now. I'm not going to call him in though because he'd be a pain.
Right. Careful.
For
the
me,
wire.
novellas are much faster write, much faster. I can write a novella in a week. And I think some of my best work has been in novellas, probably. And I really not quite sure why that is. It's not the speed of it. And it's the feel. I don't know what it is. I actually found a note in this novel I'm working on now, that I'd written a while back. And the note was to myself, it's like a novella. And that was quite telling because I think some of my novellas are more sort of probably more emotionally powerful in some respects. I think, and this is me personally, and maybe it's a fault, maybe it's right, but when I'm writing a novel, it's more sort of I'm thinking more about the story and the plot. And when I'm writing a novella, I'm thinking about the feel of it and the emotion. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's probably wrong, but it's just
It works.
I've always said if I could make a living writing novellas, I'd be very, very happy. But
there's obviously the huge advantage of the fact they're shorter, so they're easier to work with than a novel. But I think I like getting into the meat of a big novel. Again, like Fever House was the first sort of big novel I'd read in a while, and I love the experience of diving into that.
Terrific. Yeah, such a great book. Yeah, Keith's too good. I want to be him when I grow up.
I have to try and get Keith on here.
He should. He's a lovely dude as well. I met him at Comic-Con. He blurbed Secret Lives of the Dead, actually.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's on the cover or inside. So I met him at Comic-Con and we had a quick chat, and then I met him in Bath at a Eric LaRocca signing. Actually, it was a joint thing with Keith and Eric. They were on tour together, sort of. So.
See, who says there's not amazing talent swimming around the UK Isles?
Right, they're both American, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that's an awful thing to say. They're both American, so they were over
well,
here.
I was trying not to say like we get nice talent in here from only America, because obviously Brit's got it too. But I've met Eric a few times. He's they're a lovely guy as well.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
But you mentioned a minute ago about your kind of Halo novel that you've worked very hard on. Before we kind of work into wrapping up this interview, Tell us a little bit about this novel and how you got the opportunity. For people who might be Halo fans, what should they get excited about?
Right. So I'm trying to think how much they've said about it. I'm pretty sure I can say that it's it's a, it's a it's 25th anniversary of the first Halo game this year, either 20th or 25th. Halo Combat Evolved, so it's a tie-in to that original game. So the
Amazing.
novel takes place in the 4-day period of the Battle of Halo, um, and it follows. So when I was asked to write this, I played Halo, but I wasn't like a massive
I
fan,
was
and I
going to
got into
ask,
it a
yeah.
lot more. Obviously, have had to get into it a lot more. So it follows a character called Sergeant Marvin Maboto, who is mentioned in passing in the first Halo game. He's not a character; he's a corpse. The Master Chief finds this corpse, and it's Marvin Maboto. So I tell his story in this novel.
Nice.
Um, it's got a bit of a Dirty Dozen type of thing. Most of the characters are prisoners for one reason or another, and it's a space horror novel. And they asked me to write it, so I'm writing it for Simon and Schuster in the States, Gallery Books, and the editor there, Ed Schlesinger, who I've worked with before. I wrote a 30 Days a Night novel for him quite a few years ago now, and I also wrote a story for the Stephen King anthology, which they edited, End of the World as We Know It. So Ed asked me to write this novel because it's a space horror, and he knows I can do space horror because I've done Alien and Predator and stuff like that. Firefly. It's just such great fun. I had so much fun. But I said yes, I'd love to do it, and I said, can you send me some Halo stuff as research? So novels and comics and gameplay. I went on YouTube. You can watch people playing the whole game online, and so I had to immerse myself in the whole Halo lore and universe for quite a while, which was fascinating because I didn't realize how much stuff there was.
Hmm.
I read several novels and novellas and comics, um, and then they sent me the Halo Encyclopedia, and it's like 400 pages long. I mean, everything from species to worlds to science and weapons and armor and society and religions, and it's overwhelming. I did my best to write a novel that's recognizably Halo, and I sent it in a week ago tomorrow, actually, to my editor. So I haven't heard back yet. And the more days pass, the more I'm thinking, has he read it yet? I I think it's okay. It's fast moving. It's action packed. I think I'm hoping it's what they wanted. Time. Oh, he's my boy now. Hello.
Hey, hey,
Time will
Otis.
tell. He's Otis. Time will tell. So yeah, it's great fun to write.
Yeah.
And I always love doing the tie-in stuff that I'm not really au fait with, because it's, like when Titan asked me to do Firefly, I can say this now. They said, "Are you a Firefly fan?" I said, "Yeah, I love it." And I watched it when I was, a little while ago. I hadn't watched it for some time, so I had to immerse myself in Firefly and
Fake it
loved
till you
it.
make it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a working writer, so if people offer me opportunities, I do my best to make them work. And with Firefly it worked. I won an award, and the novel was quite well received, I think. So, um, and is Otis everyone? There he is.
Hey, for people watching on
Hi.
YouTube, here's the doggo.
um,
Bless him.
yeah. Um, and Conan. I wrote a Conan novel a couple of years ago, which was out. It was out last year. And again, I'd read a lot of Conan stuff when I was younger, but hadn't read it for quite some time. Titan asked me to write a novel. I said, "Yeah, big Conan fan." And so I bought got it here somewhere, the full nice leather bound edition of all the stories, and they still
Nice.
held up. I loved it,
Yeah.
and that was great fun.
Yeah.
And I like the reaction sometimes. You realize there's a massive fan base for these things. Halo more than
Hmm.
anything I've done other than Star Wars. I
Yeah. A
think.
lot of my friends were
Oh,
huge on Halo.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize how big it is, and it's
Mhm.
like these books get on. I think the first Halo novel sold upwards almost 1 million copies. It's insane. I'm not sure
Wow.
this one's going to, but they get on bestseller lists and stuff. So
Fingers
bring it
crossed.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, but my Conan novel was. I like the reception. Sometimes it's been called the worst Conan novel ever, and the best Conan novel since Howard wrote them. So I'm quite happy with that, really.
I don't understand cats. I'm sorry. I don't get you.
My dog's just lying down, rolling around
For people
now.
not on YouTube, the cat just attacked.
Yeah.
Hi, you're fine. Yeah, I
Aw.
mean, for people who want to find out more, we spoke at fairly long length last time about tie-in stuff. So there's some extra information. As I say, I'll put a link to that
Yeah.
in the show notes. People that want to hear you talk more about tie-ins and kind of how that works and things. But we are unfortunately getting close to the end of our time.
Yeah, it feels like we've been talking 10 minutes.
I know they fly by, and it'll be another 3
Okay.
years before we speak again.
Yeah, well, let's hope not. Let's
Hopefully not.
make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah.
For sure. But I do have one question, and then I have a quick fire round for you, which is 10
Sure.
questions I throw at you quite quickly.
All right.
They're kind questions. It's not
All right.
scary, I promise.
You're not testing me on my own novels, are you? Because I'll fail. I'll fail.
I'm the same. Like I write something and then it's just gone. Like
Yeah.
I'm there in the moment and then it disappears.
Yeah.
But if
me, mate.
yeah, well, the question I've got for you is, which horror authors are not receiving the attention you think that they should? I try and use this section to highlight authors that potentially, are really, really good, but they're just not getting as much attention as some of the bigger ones generally do. Have you got anyone that kind of springs to mind?
I would have said Keith Rossen a few months ago, but he is getting the attention he deserves.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's doing great. I think Gemma Amore, I think, is going to
Always
rock it. Gemma's great. She, my dog. Sorry. Yes. Hello, mate. Yeah, Gemma's terrific. I love not only her writing, but her professionalism and her attitude. She's got focus.
Yes.
And do great. A bit on the spot now.
I should have prepared you for this one.
No, that's okay. So I always say Ray Cluley, he's a terrific writer it's down in West Wales now. Ray's just a brilliant short story writer, and I wish he'd write more novels, or wish he'd write novels. Ray's brilliant.
Nice. I mean, that will take us.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That's good. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, so are you ready for the quick fire round?
Yes, go on then.
Yes, I love it. So again, 10 questions. Some of them are multiple choice, some of them are just quick throw at you, see what comes out. Nothing there to trip you up, but let us begin.
We shall see.
Question 1. What scares you more, the supernatural or real people?
Real people.
Number 2, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
If you had to survive one of your own stories, which one would you choose?
Blimey. None of the post-apocalyptic stuff. If I had to survive one of my stories, it would be, all right, The Silence, because it'd be a lot of fun.
Fair. What's one book you wish you'd written?
Oh, well, we just talked about this. Coffin Moon by Keith Rossen.
We'll have to read that now.
The vampire novel that is, it's just brilliant. It's already my novel of the year, and it's halfway through January.
Wow. Okay. Yep. That's bumped up the TBR. What's one superstition you secretly believe in?
Oh, I don't think I believe in any anymore. I used to think to myself, this should be one word answers. I used to do stuff.
No, you're good.
I used to, like roll up a bit of paper, and I used to think, oh, if I get this in the bin, I'm going to get that book deal I'm after.
Nice.
Stupid
I love
stuff
that.
like that. Don't do that anymore. Any superstitions? No, I don't think I.
No,
really
that's fair.
believe in any.
I mean, if it helps as well, every time I do these with Michael David Wilson from This Is Horror, they're not quick fire rounds. They are full answers for each question.
Right. I suppose one thing I'd say is a writer's superstition. I really don't like discussing work in progress.
Okay, fair.
So
We'll take it.
if somebody says, a friend will say, so what's a novel about you're writing? I go, it's about, and the reason being, because I try and tell them and it sounds fucking terrible.
It never does when you say it, does it? It's like in your head, it's beautiful. And then you're like, it's about a scarecrow who takes over a town. And yeah.
And so one of my favorite quotes is, I dream in fire, but work in clay. And it's by Arthur Machen. So when you've got this novel idea in your head, it's the sort of platonic version of that novel. It's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. And then when you start writing it, you start destroying it. So you dream in fire, but you work in clay. And that comes through when somebody says, so what's the new novel about? You say, well, this one's about this guy, and there's a tree, and there's a witch in it, and there's this other guy, and it sounds so terrible. And so it's not a superstition, it's just something I don't like.
Yeah.
I'd rather discuss work in progress with people.
Fair. One other quick analogy that I've heard as well is like when you come up with a story idea, it's this crystal ball. And in
Yeah.
order to write it, you have to smash it on the floor and then glue it back together,
Yeah, I like that.
which is
Yeah.
similar to the fire and clay thing.
Yeah. Because there'll
Uh,
always be good bits missing.
yeah. And it will never be what it is. That's just
Right.
how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
When reading a paperback or hardback, do you dog ear pages or do you use bookmarks?
Bookmarks. How
Oh,
dare
thank
you?
you. Same. Do you have a go-to snack when you're working?
I'm sort of almost renowned for liking cake. I really like, most days I'll have a little bit of cake, whether it's I do homemade or, there's a fantastic bikers cafe close to me where my son works sometimes, called the Baffle House. Shout out for the Baffle House. They do really top coffee and great cake. And I'll sit there. I'm meeting a friend there tomorrow, actually. Sit there with my laptop sometimes.
Bonus
Oh,
question then, what's your favorite cake?
Um, all of them. I do like a good Victoria sponge, but I'm also partial to a blueberry flapjack, which they do
Huh?
at Baffle House. So that'll
Oh,
be my little snack tomorrow morning.
nice. What's your favorite season?
Autumn,
A monster's scariest, seen or unseen?
unseen.
What one book would you recommend above all others, excluding your own?
Out of everything I've read, wow. Oh, blimey. How about Adam Neville's The Ritual? I mean, I'm a big fan of Adam's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's written some very scary stuff.
Yes.
Last Days was terrifying. No One Gets Out Alive, but The Ritual really did it for me partly because of the setting. I think the natural setting.
Yeah.
That setting in woodland, and a lot of my stuff's nature based. I'm in the woods every morning with the dog. So that novel
Yeah.
scared me. The previous question, seen or unseen? I said unseen, but in the film of The Ritual,
Yes.
they got the monster right, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's often when when the monster's revealed, you think, oh, really? It's just
Yeah.
it's a fucking bear with three legs or something.
Because nothing's
But
scarier than what's in your own head,
no,
generally.
right? Yeah, yeah. But in the
Yeah.
film of The Ritual, they really
I think because it was like a last minute reveal as well, wasn't it? It wasn't like
yeah.
through the whole thing, which
No,
yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
What that's in my top 5 books of all time, The Ritual.
Yeah, it's
Love that.
terrific. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I could say loads.
That's fine.
Let's say The Ritual.
Well, you have survived the 10 questions. I've got one bonus question, which is where can my listeners find out about yourself and all that you're working on?
Right. So I've got a website, timlebbon.net. I'm on Facebook and Blue Sky. I'm still got an account on X that I don't sort of use much. And I'm on Instagram that I don't really get. So honestly, I post dog pictures on Instagram and get a few likes. Yeah, I should be more. I'm much less inclined to bother with social media the older I get.
Yeah.
And that's partly because of, it's only partly because of age. It's mostly because of the shit you get drawn into and the rabbit holes you fall down.
Yeah, I am.
And
That's my New Year's resolution. I'm off social media, like
Are you?
actively. I still check in messages and stuff and post
Yeah.
through apps, but I'm off consuming.
That's great. And
Mm.
it's so good for your mental health. I do
Mhm.
find that get drawn, every day. The last 2 weeks has been a long year, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Really, every day some new fucking horror is presenting itself to you on 24-hour
Yeah.
news,
Yeah.
and it gets all
We
consuming.
shouldn't know about so many people, like famous people dying as well, I feel.
No,
Like every day my mom's like, did you know this person died? And I was like, I don't need this information.
no, I know, especially if it's So quickly back to Secret Lives of the Dead.
Yeah.
Lem, the main guy's named after Lemmy from Motorhead. One of my heroes, Motorhead, one of my favorite bands. I saw them a dozen times. And I remember my wife nudging me awake I think it was 10 years ago he died. Lemmy's dead. I said, oh, what? But a little part of me thought, how could he not be? Because,
Yeah.
the guy was a walking chemist and drank and smoked, and what a life,
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. But you can't avoid it, unfortunately. And I do find myself with the whole social media thing just falling down well, doom scrolling is a horrible term, but it happens.
Yeah.
And I tend to try and positive scroll. I keep reading the news until I read something positive.
Yeah. And then linger.
Something I saw today, the 4 astronauts come back from the space station because one of them's ill. So they brought the whole team back. And there's two Americans, a Japanese guy, and a Russian cosmonaut
Yeah.
all being there together. It's almost like they can teach us how to get on with each other.
Yeah.
You know, these astronauts. And from the beginning of what's been happening the last few years, I've held a ray of hope, knowing that there's still a bunch of bunch of different countries working together on the space station and still being there together.
It's there. The good news is there if you seek it.
It's yeah, I actually subscribe to a magazine called Positive News, which is
Oh, nice.
I think it's 4 times a year, and they do a
Yeah.
website, and it is literally what it says on the cover. It's a magazine. It's really well produced. Just a magazine full of good news from around the world. Because I still maintain, I still struggle, but I still maintain most people are decent and good,
Mhm.
and kind. The majority of people is just the minority who get the power and abuse it. So
Yes.
So hats off to you for being off socials. I really wish I could, and I kid myself that I need to be on there because of what I do, but I've got nothing to promote at the moment.
Yeah.
It's the
Well,
way it's booked, but I've got nothing to pitch and promote, and I've not posted an awful lot since Christmas. I do still lurk around and see what's going on. Though.
I think it's hard. We're writers at the core. Like, we don't want to spend our time like pushing and pushing
No,
and pushing, but there's a kind of necessary evil to be said in social media. It'd be really interesting actually to do like a panel with horror authors about the horrors of
mm,
social media, but like
yeah, it
discover
really
how
would.
people use it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just feel that I have to publish a certain amount, but it's on you to spread the news. But then I don't know. I honestly don't know how much good it does. Compared to the time you spend pimping your stuff on social media, and like a couple of novels ago, I think The Last Storm, I
Hmm.
spent a huge amount of time and effort spreading the word and blitzing social media with blurbs, and I got terrific blurbs for that book. Really didn't sell very well. And I do wonder if I'd done nothing, how much worse the sales figures would.
Well, yeah, I
Probably
found that
not.
like I started looking to where my sales were coming from. We carry on the interview for a little bit longer.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I looked a lot into my social media activity, what was actually converting into sales as much as I could track it. Because again, that's half the battle is you can't fully always track what's coming from social
no,
media platforms.
mm,
And most of my sales tended to come from manual news promotions that I was running or
mm,
through my mailing list.
yeah,
And social media wise, it's like you get a trickle and it's okay for like discovery, but you're constantly battling now against paid algorithms and people with far
yeah.
more money than you. And, you know, it used to be a case of if people were following me, I would know they would see my content because they're following me. And now that's just not a guarantee because all of the overlords are just going for whatever, they use AI to this sounds really negative, but this is the truth.
Well,
They,
it's just
yeah,
true. Yeah, yeah,
they just try and find whatever will hold your attention the longest, which is where this doom scrolling comes from. And
yeah,
I am 15 days into, well, probably a bit longer actually. I did it a couple of days before the new
yeah.
year, but like of just as I say, I have apps that let me post, but they're
Right.
independent of the platforms.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not
Right.
on the platforms and like getting
Yeah.
lured into stuff. And I've gotten more done. Not
Yeah.
just writing stuff, but like life stuff.
There's that as well. You spend so much time. I mean, so many people. I do know, close friends and family who just spend an awful lot of time on Instagram or Facebook looking at reels, and they're absolutely there to, I've seen documentaries. They're there to make you keep visiting.
Yes.
And as for writers, so a few years ago, Facebook was and Twitter used to be really effective promotional tool.
Hmm.
Um, Really not anymore. You do a post on Facebook about, I'll post a card with a blurb about my latest book. You get 3 people liking it and 1 person sharing it. I post a picture of my dog,
Hmm.
you get hundreds of likes and loads of comments. And it's what the algorithm's showing other people. So there's definitely I've thought about it a lot lately, and I wish I could police myself more and just say once in the morning, once in the evening. That's all
Hmm.
you're not going to miss anything. You absolutely will not miss anything.
I'm not.
get so much more work done. So yeah, you've inspired me. I'm gonna try and police this dog. Once I did, I took a month off a while back, a few years ago now, and loved it, and sort of, you know, raved about it to friends. I had a month off social media. Nothing happened. I didn't miss anything. Felt better. You know, mental health better. And like you say, you save hours a day. People
Mhm.
spend hours a day looking at screens.
Yes.
Not in the way we are now, because we're chatting and it's nice.
Yeah.
Looking at, I don't anymore. I used to find myself reading posts, personal posts from people I don't know,
Yeah.
and think it doesn't, we're
That's my
not,
killer. That's my real killer is like,
yeah,
again, like early days, you used to go on Instagram and it was like, here's a person I follow. And it used to be chronological. So you could, quote, catch up with,
yeah,
who you were following. And then now I'm hard pressed to scroll and find someone I actually know.
yeah, right.
Like it's
Yeah,
all the influencers and the dancers and the people selling this and that. And
yeah.
yeah, it's not what it used to be, sadly, considering it's
Mm.
social media, but it's become like everything else does. Eventually, it matures into a commerce tool for the people that own it.
Well, they have, yeah. Twitter used to be
Yeah,
a good
perfect
community.
example.
Yeah, and but more than anything, I still look at Facebook because you can, the algorithm shows you stuff, but you can also find people you're following on there, and
Yeah,
it's keeping up with mates.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I wish I could dump it, and I probably should.
Well, on that positive note, yeah, I want to say thank you, Tim, for joining me on the podcast this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up.
Yeah, pleasure to catch up again, Dan.
No
Really good.
worries. And
Thanks
then
for having me.
especially, no worries. And an especially big thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in. Before you dash off, if you're craving deeper conversation, writing advice, or just fancy hanging out with fellow readers and storytellers, join me on the Devil's Rock community on Discord. I'm on a mission to build the largest online space for fans of horror and dark fiction, a home where writers and readers connect, create, and thrive together. It's free, open to all, and always crackling with inspiration. So if you're ready to pull up a virtual chair, head on over to devilsrockbooks.com/podcast for the invite link. And until next time, my friends, write bravely and dream dark. Thanks again, Tim.
Cheers, Dan.